So, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here today. As I just heard the Slovenian introduction, yes, I'm from a social laboratory, I would say. We're 20, 30 persons living together, really trying to see if the things that we'll be talking about, can we actually do those things? So we try to do more or less a lot of what you will hear at the same time in the same place. So it is very much a social laboratory. Besides my own community, which is called Suderbyn, easy to find on Facebook or the web, I am also part of the eco-village movement, part of the permaculture movement, part of the transition movement, and together those three movements, supported very much by a lot of progressive researchers, created Ecolise, which is the organization that I'm speaking on behalf of, which is a very large European umbrella for all bottom-up, citizen-led, community-led initiatives for sustainability and climate change. So we're over 45 members, and these members are usually networks of local initiatives, and this is what we're trying to empower. Ecolise was created in 2014, and it's been going quite well, and we are trying to include more, but we're now working very much focused in getting the message out about the importance of the community-led movement, which I think most of you are a part of, and the significance in this big transition we're talking about. Let's see if I can, yeah, I could just use that. Yeah. I really appreciate the introduction from Renate Karba. I don't have to lose any more time on the severe situation we are facing. It was a very excellent summary of the situation, and the question is what we do. We have also another situation besides the climatic environmental crisis. We have this. On the 27th of September, 6.6 million people were out on the streets protesting globally. That's everywhere in the world, on every continent. It started, actually, that 6.6 million started just 1 year ago. It's like 14 months ago with one then 15-year-old girl sitting outside the Swedish parliament. And now we have 6.6 million people demanding change. I mean, for me, who have been working with these issues for, at least 20 years, finally something is shifting, and there is huge support for change, and it's going out there very wide. And the two big movements, the new movements, the Friday for Future movement, and then the other one, the Extinction Rebellion movement that started almost at the same time in London, are putting huge pressure on politicians to give us the change, to give us the answers. And maybe the secret message that I will be sending out in this presentation is that I don't think those politicians have the answer, is the problem. I'm a politician myself. I'm actually coming straight from a meeting in the Swedish Parliament. I'm a local politician, but I was in a seminar on this subject area in the Swedish Parliament on Sunday. And I can say even the most progressive politicians don't really have the answers, because the problem is so systemic. It's about shifting mindsets completely and working and creating something completely new. And it's very hard for politicians with very small budgets and expectations of citizens to make any huge shifts. The huge shift has to come from somewhere else, and I think those people are represented in the room here. I think one of the reasons why Ecolise was invited here today is because we came out with something earlier this year called the status report. We're trying to gather all research and developments in the community-led movements for climate and sustainability in one place, an online platform, a wiki, with a lot of information. Actually, all these steps, these 7 steps, which is basically a summation of research on community-led action, is collected here. And these are 7 steps, and they're not in any special order, but they're really important if we're going to make the shift that is needed for climate and the completely integrated other issues, the other planetary boundaries that we're faced with. So if we look at them, I mean, the big shift in GDP growth, this cannot be used anymore as an argument. If you hear it, oh, please don't say that again. It doesn't make any sense. We don't solve any problems. We're not getting a better life with that argument. Please use another argument. Even countries, even the British Parliament has accepted we have to get away from this. We have to use other measurement sticks. We need to restore the commons. We've lost all of our commonly managed resources. Everything is now in the hands of one institution or the private sector, etc. There's very little left that we manage in common. This is really important as a buffer to handle things, that you have whatever it is, your community forest, your community pastures, your community water. These need to be restored. Land regeneration. We've really depleted the fertility of land. We need to get that back. We need to promote social solidarity. We actually see that the income disparities everywhere in the world are growing, and this is really hard to go to a sustainable society if we if we allow people to get marginalized in our own communities. So we have to make sure those eyeglasses are always there when you're trying to figure out what to do. Participatory decision-making. More people have to get involved. The decisions we have to make are so much heavier than we've ever imagined, and that's why politicians can't make them. We have to invite in more people into the decision-making process, break the decision-making process down more, involve more people. Then we have social innovation. We need to think in new ways, to put things together in new ways. And so social innovation, I mean, everything you do, everything a community organization does, this is social innovation, thinking out how to do things in a new way. But there's a word there, transformative social innovation. Not all social innovation is good and needed. We have to have some of these eyeglasses on. What are we actually solving here? And we have some problems in society, so just don't solve that one issue. We need to think very holistically about all aspects and transformative. We want to change power structures, be much more inclusive, be much more distributive, that everyone is taking advantage, everyone is involved, and everyone is benefiting, not winners and losers. And last, support community-led initiatives. I know many of you are from community-led initiatives, and I'm going to tell you how important that is. Those of you who are not, please, researchers, support your community-led initiatives. Ministries, please see that these initiatives get resources. This is the most effective way to solve these problems. And this is the stark comparison. Yes, we can have some sort of climate project of putting up a lot of wind turbines, but if local people are not involved, if it's some corporation far away that puts this thing down there, there's not going to be the side effects of that action. So maybe this one little wind turbine that this group of people have put up is not as much electricity as the other one, but the significance of that in changing people's mentality and behavior is enormous. This is just one quote from the TESS project, because Carrie will be talking more about the TESS project, but one thing we really like there is the quote that if 5% of the population in the 28 EU countries were involved in community-led initiatives, then 85% of those countries would be actually meeting the targets of reducing their emissions by the 20% needed by 2020. So that's the huge significance. If just 5% of the population were involved in the community initiatives you're involved with, we would actually be meeting the needs. And that's the big issue today. Are we meeting the needs? So let's be very concrete. What are we talking about here? We're talking about these 4 topical areas that are typical for action in climate change by local groups. The first one is transport. Less transport is better. Smarter transport is better. Moving to bicycles, the children going on a so-called bike bus to school, that changes their mentality as well as reduces the footprint. Sending packages by bike, but also this new type of vehicles, carpools, eco-carpool, created together. We have food solutions. It's quite difficult. This agricultural area is a huge, very difficult area to solve, and we don't manage with community initiatives really to make huge inroads there. Community-supported agriculture is possible. Local food markets, local festivals celebrating local food, saving food that's being wasted. But actually we find that the most efficient one is actually when community groups organize meals, climate meals. Let's discuss about climate, let's eat locally. I remember Berlin was really challenged when they had to see if they could feed just a limited number of schools only with local food for 1 week. It was extremely difficult for Berlin to manage that. So that is a huge challenge. We're so dependent on global food. About the area of goods and materials, we have to slow down our consumption of material things by reusing, repairing, upcycling, and if nothing else is possible, recycle things. You can get a lot of job creation, you can get a lot of social contact through these type of efforts. Furniture, clothing is a huge area here that you can work with. And this is just part of shifting the mentality that we don't need to buy brand new things and throw them away. And of course, the huge area for energy, housing is important. Warm housing, natural, warm, well-insulated housing. But heating solutions and electricity solutions. The area of electricity and heating is a huge area where community-led action can actually reduce use of energy. And this should be done, of course, in cooperative forms, in different ways, using new flow energies like biogas, biomass, solar, wind, etc. There's so many different ways you can be creative in this. And I hope you'll get the opportunity today to think more about ways you could be innovative. One thing we use in Ecolise, we have the European Day for Sustainable Community, and we're spreading it all over. Slovenia was involved this year. This is one day where we can really showcase the importance of what communities are doing. And this is something we will repeat every year, so I encourage you to get involved. Make sure it's just free of charge. Your local group can just put itself on this map of Europe to show what's going on, to really showcase how important it is and how big it's getting. This year we had 27 countries participating with local initiatives in those different 27 countries. So in summation, what have we really accomplished here? There's a huge potential to just replicate many successful local community projects that have already been proven in other places. So you are welcome to look into the transition groups in the UK who have beautiful websites with examples of how they've been doing. This is networking, finding out what eco-villages are doing in the neighboring country, find out what permaculture projects are able to do, and spread these ideas and replicate, and it's steal with pride. You're welcome to take those ideas and spread them, so we can spread these ideas. I carefully use the word scale out and not scale up, because this is the problem we're trying to get away from. We cannot have these huge solutions, top-down solutions. Yes, it's very important that the EU has made some decisions to support this, but the best way to support is to support community-led initiatives, because we have to change people's mentality and behavior, and the way the human psyche functions is we like to copy. We like to copy the behavior of the neighbor. The most important thing is, yeah, you can mentally hear about, well, people are now bicycling more, but when you see your neighbor bicycling suddenly, wow, that hits you straight away. If your children or your brother or your mother changes behavior and starts serving less meat, this spreads. And this is the most effective way. That's why the most effective use of resources for the climate shift is actually going through local community groups. So whenever you have a problem, look, how could we do this in a local, more participatory, spread out way and avoid these top-down solutions? There is an empowerment in knowing that you are not alone, even though you say it's just this little, I'm trying to have this little exchange of clothes day and it's just on this little square in this part of the suburb of the city, but you are part of something really big, and people like you are doing this everywhere. And this is just happening spontaneously, and this will just spread and spread. And knowing that you're part of something much bigger really does make it feel much more important, and you get the self-esteem to talk to more people why you're doing what you're doing. So this is a very important reason why you should network. Be involved in networks of networks of networks of people making change. And we need more people involved. I mean, it is the key is to get people involved. And like I said, the 5% of the population is what we really needed. So this is what we're looking for. We are able to use these networks to really bring out the solutions, but also share with them. So we're also interested very much in the solutions that are coming from Slovenia. This status report is also very much wanting to collect information about the interesting solutions that are coming from Slovenia. And we would like to hear more about what's going on here, and then we'd like to also connect more with you and your organizations and share what is actually happening with other community-led actions in other countries, so we spread these ideas and inspire each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for reminding us that we are all part of something bigger, which can really help us grow our courage individually and collectively. Zdaj bi dal pa nekaj trenutkov za vprašanja ali pa kakšne komentarje, mogoče vašo izkušnjo vezano na to, tako da to je čas, ki je tudi namenjen še povezavi z Robertom, dokler je tukaj, tako da če kakršnokoli vprašanje, komentar, kar bi bilo dragoceno, da vsi slišimo in da nam Robert lahko še kakšno stvar osvetli, ste dobrodošli, da kar dvignete roko, pa bomo spet dali mikrofone.
Jaz sem Maja Jurc. I have the question for you. You talked about ecological transformation of Europe, but you didn't mention the function of trees, of urban forests, and about eco-services of this part of nature. We think that in Slovenia we have 46% of forest in Ljubljana, and we think that it is very important also for local communities to be involved and care about the trees. What do you think? Thank you.
I was just speaking in our local parliament, 2 weeks ago, on that very issue about what to do with the municipally owned forests, and there was a big debate about clear cutting. How much should we be allowed to clear cut? And then there was the other people arguing about the climate issue because those mature forests are keeping carbon. And I was up there arguing that there are so many other aspects of the forest for biodiversity, and it's also a way how we're showing our citizens how we relate with nature. So I think the forests are extremely important, planting trees. The Nordic Permaculture Institute calculates that every citizen on the planet needs to plant 10,000 trees during their lifetime. So I think we all need to get planting. I would also add on, besides the importance of the carbon that is stored in trees, carbon is also stored in the soil. And our agriculture has depleted the amount of humus, of organic material in the soil, and there is ways of increasing the fertility of the soil, increasing the carbon content of the soil, and thus getting carbon out of the sky, out of the carbon cycle, the natural carbon cycle, and getting it into the soil, and keeping it there. Yeah, in the furniture, yes. So any way you can pull carbon out, there is a lot of ways through planting trees, through working with the soil, that everyone at a very local level can get involved with sequestering carbon out of the carbon cycle.
Še kakšno vprašanje, komentar? While maybe people are still thinking, I have one for you, Robert. You said that, the change of mentality is so crucial. And so how do you do that? What are alternatives to shaming and blaming, which maybe is not the only option?
Yeah. I mean, I really do believe in the power of the positive example. I don't think you motivate through fear and shame. We really motivate people that a better world is possible. This is why I live in the community I live in, and really living, we choose, we're not sacrificing anything to shift lifestyle. We're actually getting a much better lifestyle. This lifestyle of mass consumption of materials and energy is not really making us happy, and we know that. Research proves that. So it must be other ways of what is the key ingredients of happiness. And I really do think that ecologically, sustainable, inclusive, regenerative society is actually going to give humanity, but also you personally, will have a much better quality of life, a personal well-being, if you make that shift. So it's from the outside, well, I have to sacrifice my airplane travels to Thailand, But, I really don't think that the sacrifice is there. And it's a slow process, and unfortunately we have to make it faster, of shifting that mentality, realizing that it is not a sacrifice, you're actually getting something better than you had.
How did you travel to Slovenia?
I came by ferry and by train. So it was 2.5 days to get here from my little island. So I'm from this island in the middle of the Baltic Sea, so it's a 3-hour ferry just to get to mainland Sweden, and then trains all the way here. Yeah.
Kakšno zadnje vprašanje, morda za Robert? Aha, zdaj sta pa dve, super.
Yeah, Nevenka Bogataj, thank you. As you come from Sweden and you would like to foster changing of our minds, my question is, what do you think about education? Sweden has a very strong educational system, formal and non-formal. So how do you see the role, its role? Thank you.
Well, I'm a huge believer in non-formal education as a way to deal with this. We invite people, we've had actually Slovenians come and live with us for a year and experience living a different lifestyle. So I believe that's a very good way of addressing this, what we're talking about, lifestyle and mentality shifts. The formal school system, and I've also been an educational politician working with this. We have so many norms and rules and national regulations and curriculums, even though there is that desire that we should be encouraging children to think. And I think it's of course working. It is working, but it's not working fast enough because our educational system was built up to serve the society that we have had until now. It produced technicians and economists for our industrial society. And how do you shift to something completely different? You would need a real big shift. And that's, once again, we're back to that thing. Our politicians think that they're there to maintain that system. And it's really hard to make these big shifts. And that's why I think the big shifts actually have to come from outside the system. And those are the ones that you just spontaneously take.
Yes, I'm very interested to learn more about the process of getting people involved. Because I think in these communities often people self-select themselves and move there to the community. But I mean, if I think about my neighborhood in Ljubljana, this sounds probably like science fiction to 99% of them. So how do we get those neighborhoods, communities, to also get into a more sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah, I think it's all about taking small steps from your existing patterns, and there are small steps that are attractive to everyone. So that community meal on the street, you know, we could also, I think, trying to reach out to groups that we normally wouldn't be able to reach out to. Growing heritage heirloom vegetables, the vegetables of Slovenia that are almost lost. These need to be saved. We need to cultivate these, and we need to enjoy them together and enjoy traditional recipes of those vegetables. Something like that would very much reach out to individuals that you normally wouldn't be reaching out to, that can see their connection into this change. So we really need to involve everyone. And I can imagine everyone needs various services, but I think all humans need social contact. This is actually the key to our personal, mental, psychological well-being is social contact. And this is what you offer. You have one way of connecting to that person and bringing them out of their house or out of their flat and making social connections. And then that group leads on to another group. So this is really what the process is. It's about creating these social networks. And it's like an amoeba. We were saying, well, your question in the beginning, what is community? Community is this very hard to describe social interaction between people. And this group was created maybe for that food market that we started, but then those three people started talking about putting solar panels on a roof, and that led to another discussion about how the children are getting back and forth to school. And we just get these networks and networks and layers of networks, and it's those layers of networks that shift people's behaviors, and people get pulled in one way or the other. And once I think you get pulled into these things, you do not want to quit. Something that Slovenia is world famous for is the amount of people in the Let's Do It cleanup, where you have more than 10-11% of the population was involved in that in Slovenia. That was a way of pulling people in, people that had never done any civic action or environmental action in their life, and you pulled them in. So you know very well how to pull people in. And once they've been there, they don't want to quit. Wow, I felt good about myself. I made some new friends. I think I did something good for my community. What's next? You know? So, and it's about capturing those people and saying, why don't we work on this issue? Why don't we work on this issue? So it just keeps on spinning and spinning.
Thank you. There is a very big percent of adults in Slovenia who don't believe in climate change and who don't believe that pollution is a big problem. How do you think we could appeal to those people? How could we change their mind? How could we present facts to maybe older people who are so comfortable in the lifestyle they have, who are really comfortable with going by car even if it's just 600 meters? How could we educate older people or people of just 40, middle-aged, that they need to make changes? Because with children it's really simple, you just start implementing changes in the school system, but with older people who are unwilling to understand that they're wrong, how do you tell them that they need to change?
Thank you for that. I think, just like I think in a lot of other areas, and this is maybe a culture from, I call it the solutions movement, we're not going to head on, violently come into conflict with the system that we think is destructive. No, we're going to create something better on the side, and people will see that. I think that's the same with this issue. I don't think I would argue with this older person who is very much a climate denier, skeptical person. I would try to involve them in activities anyway. There's going to be a food market with local foods, and there'll be coffee and cake there, and they get pulled in anyway. But the best way to work with people's mind is working through the people they love. They love their children, they love their grandchildren, and when the grandchildren come home from the kindergarten and say, don't you think we should separate the garbage? This is the most sneaky way of addressing that, is that their hearts are open to receive information from people they love, and that's the best way, and not to intellectually argue with them. I don't think that's going to work.
Oh yeah, Boruto Sonkar. Are the politicians the one who we have to politically argue with? Do we have to persuade them? The group you mentioned, you said, okay, we can sort of bypass them and use the tactics of good practices and show them. But who are the groups we have to argue with?
I'm actually very much connected myself, and many of my friends are connected to these protest movements. So I was out last Friday at our local protest, which was extremely small. I have a sort of a strange relationship to these protests, both that I feel like I'm a part of the solutions movement, but we so need those protest movements. We need the pressure on the politicians to open up and listen, and I think the politicians have gotten that message already, that they better look more progressive, green about climate issues, or they're going to lose their job. So I think that is happening already. We need to keep that pressure going. We need that pressure to reach out into your communities. So that's why we need these this pressure from, especially from this young generation that's saying, our future is being stolen. We want you to take responsibility. We need that because politicians think election to election, and they don't think about lifetime. So, not on a daily basis. When you have to make a decision, you're thinking about how many euros do we have left in the budget and what choices are we going to make, and I have an election coming up. So it's hard to make these long-term. We have to force them into taking these long-term decisions that are very painful, but I think really they don't really know how to solve these things, and they're really sort of stuck. I think we will actually be forced to have a new group of politicians coming up that know more how to transform society, and maybe it's coming from the community-led groups in this room. So I think that will happen eventually, that we have to have new types of politicians. But also, I'm very much passionate about that these protesters need information about what is the transformation we're talking about, and not just to protest to the national politicians, please change things, because they really don't know. So I think this is an opportunity for all those young people who for the first time in their life are out protesting, saying something needs to be done. They need to know how to transform their lives, and they need to get also an understanding of what that transformation of society would look like. And that's sort of up to us, maybe. Yeah.
Hvala. Aha, še zadnje vprašanje tam, potem bomo dali pa drugi govorki prostor.
Hello.
Če se vstanete, ker nam je lažje pol slediti.
Nice to meet you again, Robert. I have some friend trees in Sweden also. I might give an answer to a young lady or young people. In Slovenia, this kind of circular economy always existed, especially in countryside. So if young people want to make a change, they could go help locals on farms voluntarily. You don't need much. And when they'll start to make their most observed people, not Kardashians and that kind of stuff, then the other population will change. Because I think the biggest problem is in youth. They don't really have the option to be a good representative for what they really are. In a sense that young people could still go walking. I just heard, because I wanted to do some project, I heard that in our society, when I was young, I had to walk to school like 3 kilometers. And now it's kind of forbidden by the law, as I heard in Slovenia, that they had parents, they have to drive the children to school. They cannot walk that mileage. And there's big traffic jams and so on. So basically, the young people just need to go outside of the city. That's, I think, the biggest thing that they can do, and they support not some pop stars that they don't really have any influence, and they could start support science and real, not something that really affects the life. Thank you.